So big 10 by 9 virtual Limavady welcome to Darius Whelan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I'll fire away with my story. My mother is worried that my father may be having an affair. It's a theme she comes back to quite often as we care for her during lockdown. It's April 2020 in Limerick. My mother, Breda, is 84 and she has Parkinson's disease. She says, I think Dad's having an affair, you know. He has another woman. She always calls my father Dad. This can be said at breakfast or randomly at any stage while she's sitting reading the Irish Times, for example. We've grown somewhat accustomed to the lockdown, and we're pleased to know it will all be worthwhile because there'll be no need for any more lockdowns by September. Yes, that's what we thought at the time. The house is very quiet, the loudest sound being the whizzing of the stair lift up and down the stairs. We've very few visitors, and she's not even able to take a stroll up to the end of the road as she's cocooning. The house is filled with the paraphernalia of sickness: walking sticks, rollators, incontinence pads, and tablets in blister packs. I've gone from taking care of my children as they grew up to now taking care of my parents as they grow old. I've moved 60 miles from Cork to Limerick. We have a live-in carer, which allows me to do my day job from 9 to 5 on a laptop in my bedroom. Breda struggles with the carer's name, variously calling her Shannon and Sharon. Her name is actually Shana. She's 28 and she's Canadian. Breda is small and quite thin. She wears clothes which are of good quality and stylish, with a fondness for a colourful scarf which complements her outfit well. She likes to read the paper, listen to the radio, and then watch TV from about 3 to 9 p.m. She functions reasonably well in spite of the Parkinson's and is reasonably alert. She really loves listening to music. For decades, she sang as a soprano in a choir called the Voices of Limerick and in the local church choir. She raised 5 children and enjoyed her job as a primary school teacher for 30 years before retiring in 1988. There was tragedy in her life too, especially when one of her sons, my brother, died through drowning at the age of 22. Since that date in 1986, she has never visited the stretch of river where he drowned. Before the lockdown, a big weekly outing was the excursion to Mass, a mile away in Milford Hospice and Nursing Home. The Mass was a surreal experience, with a congregation made up mainly of nursing home residents in wheelchairs and nuns in their 70s and 80s. When communion was distributed to those in wheelchairs, it was accompanied by a small plastic glass of water to ensure that nobody choked. The venue suited us better than the local church because it was accessible for Breda with her rollator, which she called her buggy. She knows that there's a new virus in the country, but doesn't fully understand it. Sometimes all the talk of infection rates, PCR tests, and ICUs on the news gets too much for her, and she says, "We've had enough of that now," asking us to change channels. The pandemic is an added burden for everybody, reducing what can be done, closing shops, and requiring social distancing. It adds to the stress for her of growing old and having Parkinson's disease. Time moves slowly, and she and we get bored. She looks at her watch a lot and studies the clocks throughout the house. She really looks forward to Maura and Dahi, the Today Show on RTE TV at 3 o'clock. She loves certain media personalities such as Claire Byrne, Mary Kennedy, Brendan Grace, and Brendan O'Carroll. This love even extends to Dick and Angel from Escape to the Chateau, an odd choice perhaps. She likes Frank Patterson's singing, but thinks he opens his mouth too wide when singing. She advises us that if he's on telly, he has a lovely voice, but don't be looking at him. She's not a big fan of modernity, meaning anything since about 1960. She was shocked when visiting Dublin in 1985 to see a man wearing a yellow shirt on Grafton Street. She also disapproves of modern food, such as pasta and salads which don't have sliced ham in them. She sips a half glass of wine every now and then, but only if I have one with her, as she doesn't want Shana to think she's fond of the drink. Occasionally, we're reminded that she has a progressive disease. One day, she can't get up out of bed and her legs are rigid. On a few other occasions, she falls out of the bed in the middle of the night, even though there's a small rail at the side of the bed. One time, about a year ago, she fell in the bathroom in the middle of the night. She couldn't get up, and she called for my father, who was asleep, but had headphones on and didn't hear her. She couldn't reach the alarm on her wrist because it was caught under her. Eventually, my father somehow worked out what was happening. She had locked herself in, so he needed to use an axe to break down the door. As the axe was thundering into the door and she lay there shivering on the cold floor, she was terrified it would hit her or that the door would fall in on top of her. The door was replaced, but there are still axe marks on the door jamb. Brida's theory about her husband's affair is linked with the fact that his big hobby is playing poker at friends' houses, usually until 3 in the morning. In her opinion, this is giving him a good opportunity to have an affair with another woman he must have met. She finds that he's absent more and more and not around when she needs him. We're almost afraid to tell her that Dad has been dead for 6 months.
Oh, Darius, I read that story and I found it profoundly moving. And hearing it, it's again profoundly moving. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Wonderful, wonderful story. Such a sad ending. Um,
But she's
I,
still well.
and what about the yellow shirt? Sorry, I don't want to be trivial, but I mean that really struck me as bizarre.
Yeah, it's just one example of many, really. Like she didn't like 2FM either, because it was modern music. I
Fair
think
enough.
she even objected to the Beatles. It's just some people are like that, they think that after a certain decade, anything after that is just too modern.